For nearly 30 years, a complete mystery has hovered over the Colonial Parkway in Virginia. Today, we're diving into the eerie tale of four couples caught in the grip of a Colonial Parkway murderer. Between October 1986 and September of 1989, something terrible happened along this quiet stretch of road. Four couples, just out for a drive and spending time together, met with tragedy. Each couple faced a horrifying fate. They were either taken out or disappeared without a trace. It was a time of great fear and confusion in the great state of Virginia. The way that these crimes happened was actually pretty horrifying. Some were suffocated, others were stabbed, and some kind of took some lead. No one could understand why it was happening or who was even behind it. People wondered if there was one person responsible for all of these awful deeds or if there were several other people involved. It was like something out of a scary movie with no clear answers in sight. So if that kind of isn't your thing, then you might not want to watch this one. The Colonial Parkway is known as a picturesque route that winds through Virginia's historic towns of Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown. It's like a ribbon of road stretching for 23 miles, connecting these communities and collectively known as actually the Historic Triangle. The scenic marvel didn't just pop up overnight though. It took about 25 years to create, from 1930 to 1957. Crafted under the watchful eye of the National Park Service, it was designed for more than just getting from one point to another. With its scenic pull-offs and historical markers, it's a journey through time. One of the highlights of this parkway is near where it meets James and York rivers. Here, the views are just absolutely breathtaking. They stretch across waters, offering a panoramic spectacle. Tourists flock to the Colonial Parkway year-round. In the summer and spring, its shady lanes provide a cool retreat, while in the fall and winter, the trees explode into a bunch of just absolutely beautiful colors, painting the landscape in hues of red, orange, and gold. In fact, just my personal opinion, that's the time to go. But amidst the beauty, a shadow does lurk. 30 years after its completion, the Colonial Parkway became shrouded in fear, mystery, and everybody was absolutely terrified. In mid to late 1980s, it was the scene of the four gruesome double homicides, casting a chilling pall over the tranquil facade. The brutal murders of Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Dowski on October 12, 1986 marked the beginning of what would be known as the Colonial Parkway murders. Their bodies were unfortunately strangled and had their throats cut. They were discovered at a pull-off along the parkway, extinguishing the promising futures in a tragic instant. Kathleen Thomas, a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, belonged to its second class to admit women. In an era marked by resistance to women's inclusion in military institutions, Kathleen's decision to join the Navy was met with a lot of opposition. But despite these issues and harassment, Kathleen remained kind of steadfast and undeterred by the challenges ahead. Her brother William recalled Kathleen's fearless determination to pursue paths that others deemed impossible. Even amidst the adversity of the 80s, when speaking Russian held significant strategic importance, Kathleen excelled as a Russian scholar, earning recognition as the most improved Russian speaker at the Academy. William noted the heightened tensions at the time, with Russia being a prominent global adversary, because if you know anything about the 80s, the United States and Russia didn't really get along too well. In addition to navigating the hurdles of a male-dominated institution, Kathleen faced scrutiny for her sexuality. The Navy's prohibition of gay and lesbians further complicated her journey, as she reportedly came under investigation by multiple agents regarding her sexual orientation. Despite the obstacles and prejudices that she encountered, Kathleen still persisted, leaving behind a legacy of courage and resilience that transcended the boundaries of gender and sexual identity. This triggered her decision to leave the Navy, though, after 5 years. Kathleen had discovered that she was actually into women after graduating from the Naval Academy. Unfortunately, she felt that the Navy wasn't as welcoming of a place for someone like her. It was a difficult realization for Kathleen, as she had always dreamt of following in the footsteps of her father, who had also served in the Navy. After bailing out of that, Kathleen then found work as a stockbroker in Norfolk. It was there that she then met Rebecca, a young woman 6 years her junior. Rebecca was a senior business administration major at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. Despite being a hardworking student, Rebecca also juggled caring for toddlers at a daycare center and doing clerical work at the college's English department. Kathleen was instantly drawn to Rebecca's trendy fashion sense and her dedication to her studies. Thanksgiving in 1986 was actually approaching around this time, and Kathleen was excited to introduce Rebecca to her family. She was looking forward to spending quality time with her loved ones and sharing her happiness with them. Kathleen also had dreams of her future, contemplating the possibility of studying international relations in graduate school. She was eager to embark on this new chapter of her life alongside with Rebecca. However, fate had other plans for Kathleen and Rebecca. Their lives were tragically cut short by an unknown killer one night over the Columbus Day weekend. The couple had decided to spend some time at Lover's Lane of Colonial Parkway, a place that they often visited. Little did they know that this chilly October night would be their last. Their bodies were later found inside Kathleen's 1980 Honda Civic, which had been pushed down the Chittum Annex Overlook, an embankment area off the Colonial Parkway. The gruesome scene suggested that Kathleen had put up a fight as a clump of hair was discovered clenched in her fingers. There were no signs of, and I hate to have to say it this way, but it's just how YouTube works, reproductive assault, leading investigators to conclude that their deaths were purely a result of murder. It was speculated that the killer had gained the trust of Kathleen and Rebecca by disguising themselves as park rangers or potentially even a police officer. This allowed them to lure the unsuspecting couple out of their car. William, Kathleen's brother, had his own theory about the killer. He believed that the culprit had extensive knowledge of Colonial Parkway with its twists and turns and limited entrances and exits, knowing that the road would be relatively empty in the middle of the night. Rebecca was found in the backseat of the car, whereas Kathleen was squeezed into the hatchback. Autopsy reports revealed rope burns on their neck and wrists, indicating signs of strangulation. The throats had been slashed from left to right, with Kathleen's wound being so deep that it was basically almost all the way through. In an attempt to destroy any incriminating evidence, the car and the women's bodies were doused in diesel fuel. However, the killer's plans to set the car on fire failed, and instead the vehicle was pushed down an embankment towards the York River. 3 days later, on October 12th, the car was discovered tangled in the brush, still containing the women's purses and money. The motive for the murderers officially ruled out robbery, leaving investigators baffled as to why this even happened in the first place. Rebecca's case caught attention of the FBI since it occurred on federal land. The brutal slaying struck fear in the hearts of the community as they worried the killer could potentially strike again. Little did they know that their worst fears would come true just 11 months later. On a quiet September evening in 1987, the Colonial Parkway became the stage for another tragic event, adding to its dark reputation. And this is just a break in here for a second. This is why you always stay strapped. I don't know what everybody's opinion is on it, but I'm telling you, man, going anywhere alone or going on drives, you think, oh, I'm in a car, I'm on a back road, it doesn't really matter, I can always just drive off. No. Always keep something on you because you just never know. People are crazy. Anyhow, this time it involved David Knobling, a young man of 20, and Robin Edwards, who was a mere 14 years old. Little messed up. David was a resident of Hampton and had his whole life ahead of him, and he was working diligently at his father's landscaping business, pretty much preparing for the day that he was becoming a father himself. His girlfriend was expecting their child, a glimmer of hope in their young lives. Robin, on the other hand, was a restless soul, grappling with inner demons at a very young age. Despite her struggles with mental health, she was described as vibrant and fearless, unafraid to embrace life's challenges. Her family had noticed signs of improvement in her demeanor through all the therapy that she was going through, rewarding her progress with a kitten. In the events of the fateful day, it began innocently enough, with David and Robin enjoying a carefree afternoon at an arcade, accompanied by David's younger brother and cousin. Little did they know that this would be their final outing together. Also, I'm just throwing this out there, I don't know how innocently that really is, given David's propensity to go after someone who is way too young. Anyways, we're just gonna move on. So as evening descended, David dropped Robin off at her home, unaware of the tragedy that was awaiting them. Under the cover of darkness, Robin ventured out to meet David once more. Their meeting took them to Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge, a serene sanctuary that would soon bear witness to unspeakable horror. Shots rang out in the night, shattering the peace of the tranquil surroundings. David's truck, abandoned at the refuge's parking area, stood as a silent reminder of the violence that had happened there. See, David cherished this truck more than anything else. It was his pride and joy, polished and cared for like a precious gem. So when his family discovered it abandoned, alarm bells began ringing in their minds. The sight was eerie. Keys still in the ignition, doors ajar, and the radio softly humming, as well as windshield wipers swaying to an invisible rhythm. Inside, among these scattered articles of clothing, lay David's wallet alongside 2 pairs of underwear and shoes. It was clear that the robbery wasn't the motive behind this mysterious scene. Days stretched into an agonizing wait until David's father and a team ventured out in search. Their hearts would sink when they stumbled upon the lifeless bodies of David and his companion, Robin, washed up on the banks of the James River at the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge. The scene was horrific. Both had been cruelly taken out. David, Shot twice and Robin once with cold precision. David bore an additional wound in his shoulder, evidence suggesting a desperate attempt to flee from their assailant. The tragedy bore grim similarities to another unsolved case haunting the Colonial Parkway. Kathleen and Rebecca, like David and Robin, were a couple slain in Lover's Lane-esque settings. The two locations separated only by a short drive. Despite tireless efforts by law enforcement, both cases remained shrouded in darkness, the answers to their mysteries just slipping through the cracks of time like sand in an hourglass. 7 more months would pass since the chilling discovery of David and Robin's tragic fate, but the grip of fear tightened again. On April 10th, 1988, the police were then thrown into the midst of another confusing situation when an abandoned vehicle was found at the York River overlook merely 3 miles from the site of Kathleen and Rebecca's brutal slaying. This time, it was a striking red 1982 Toyota Celica belonging to a 20-year-old Richard Keith Call. Keith, a student at the Christopher Newport University, was on his date the night before with an 18-year-old Cassandra Haley. Their budding romance kind of held promise, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness, especially in the area. Keith, a devotee to computer science, had held a special affection for this specific car, his prized possession that mirrored his quiet demeanor. In contrast, Cassandra was a freshman at the same university, possessed apparently a very radiant spirit, as she is described, dabbling in modeling and sharing her passion for gymnastics through teaching. Her mother's description painted a picture of a young woman overflowing with warmth and kindness, eager to embrace life and forge connections with everyone that she encountered. April 9th promised to etch itself into the memories of Keith and Cassandra's mind. The young couple were swept up in the exhilaration of their first date. Their evening began with a movie, setting the stage for a night of laughter and newfound connection at the lively party in the University Square area of Newport News, Virginia. As the festivities wound down in the early hours of April 10th, Keith and Cassandra embarked on their journey home, feeling pretty jazzed about the future ahead. However, fate, as usual, would have other plans. In the early hours of dawn, Keith's father, traveling along the Colonial Parkway en route to work, stumbled upon a chilling sight. His son's beloved red car abandoned on the roadside. The driver's door hung ajar, keys dangling from the ignition, a silent testament to the abrupt halt of their joyous evening. Ignoring this gnawing unease in his gut, Mr. Call pressed on, the notion of Keith and Cassandra venturing into the river area offering a fragile thread of hope. Yet, as the morning sun ascended, the truth unveiled itself in the stark light of day. A park ranger discovering a forsaken vehicle sounded the alarm, summoning authorities to the scene. Amidst the eerie stillness, a disconcerting detail emerged. The couple's discarded clothes strewn across the car's seat. A puzzling discrepancy noted by Mr. Call, who later recounted the absence of such a sight. Keith's wallet, nestled safely within Cassandra's purse, remained untouched, dispelling, once again, the notion that there could have been a robbery. A frantic search ensued, casting a net of desperation over the frigid waters of York River, where fears of another tragic accident loomed large. Canines would be dispatched, and they traced the faint scent of the missing pair, only to lose it amidst the currents. Despite exhaustive efforts, the river yielded no answers. Its depths just kind of would not give up what may have happened. Months would then continue to go on, marked by the haunting absence of Keith and Cassandra. The Colonial Parkway once again was thrust into the spotlight of infamy, and the inexplicable disappearance of these two young people, their fates intertwined with the chilling legacy of the killer's reign of terror. On September 5th, 1989, things got scary once again near the Colonial Parkway. Two young people, David Lauer and Anna Maria Phelps, vanished. They weren't really dating like the other victims, which does break pattern, as Anna Maria was actually dating Daniel's brother Clint. They all lived together trying to make ends meet. One day, Daniel and Anna Maria went out for a drive. Daniel needed to grab some stuff from his hometown, and Anna Maria wanted to visit her family as well. But on their way back home, something went wrong. Their car, a gold Chevy Nova, was found abandoned at a rest stop on Interstate 64 in New Kent County. The police were puzzled. The car was facing the wrong way, not towards their home. Inside, Anna Maria's purse was left behind and the keys were still in the ignition. Just like the other cases, this really was not a robbery and there was nothing to confirm that it may have been. It left everyone wondering, did something happen at the rest stop, or were they taken somewhere else and the car was then left there to throw them off the trail? Either way, it was another tragic chapter in the Colonial Parkway mystery. At first, investigators thought Daniel and Anna Maria had taken off together, maybe trying to escape all of their problems, but their fate would take a tragic turn. 44 days after they were last seen, hunters would then stumble upon the skeletal remains in a wooded area near Interstate 64 between Williamsburg and Richmond. The hunters then found them on a dirt road not far off from where Daniel's car had been abandoned at the rest stop. The bodies were in bad shape, covered by a blanket taken from Daniel's car. It was really hard to figure out how exactly they had been taken out or if anything else happened to them before they were then killed, but it looked like Anna Maria had been stabbed based on the marks found on her bones. Even with modern technology, the investigation would hit dead ends. Anna Maria and Daniel's case joined the list of unsolved murders in Virginia, just like the ones on Colonial Parkway in 86, 87, and in 88. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, the puzzle of the Colonial Parkway murders remained frustratingly unsolved over the years. Despite questioning 150 potential suspects, none were found to be connected to these crimes. Theories began to pop up, with police suggesting that there may be a possibility of a serial killer being responsible for the 8 deaths due to the striking similarities in the circumstances surrounding them. All of the victims met their demise either at or near their vehicles, with the first 3 couples discovered in well-known Lover's Lane spots along the parkway. Robbery and reproductive assault were ruled out as motives, as there were no signs of such crimes in any of the crime scenes. The proximity of the first and third murders, as well as the second and fourth, did raise suspicions, with locations being mere miles or at least half an hour away from Colonial Parkway. However, not everyone agreed on a single killer theory. Some believe that multiple perpetrators might have been involved, pointing to differences in the methods of the killing. For instance, Kathy Thomas and Rebecca Dowski were basically suffocated before having their throats kind of sliced in 1986, a departure from the methods seen in other cases. The horrific murders along the Colonial Parkway seemed to stop after David, Robin, Anna Maria, and Daniel were all taken out. But then 7 years later, something awful happened again. On Memorial Day weekend in 1996, Julie and Lolly, a couple camping in Shenandoah National Park, would vanish. A few days later, their bodies would also be found. They were tied up, their mouths covered, as someone had cut their throats. This made retired detective Steve Spangola think that maybe different people were behind the murders. He thought that the ones in 1986 might be connected to what happened in 1996, but some people still believed it could all be the work of one person. The families of the victims and others kept searching for answers, hoping to solve the mystery to bring justice to the innocent victims. The Colonial Parkway murders left a painful mark on the lives of 8 innocent people and their families. For over 3 decades, they have endured a relentless wait for justice, a test of patience that could wear down anyone's resolve. Despite the passage of time, though, there is still hope that they will get closure, particularly for William, Kathleen's brother, and Joyce, Richard Call's sister. In a quest for answers, Joyce took to managing a Facebook page titled What Happened to Richard Call and Cassandra Haley. Despite her natural inclination towards privacy, she recognized the importance of reaching out and sharing their stories. To her, these tragedies have become woven into the fabric of folklore, a haunting reminder of lives cut short and mysteries left unsolved. On the other hand, William runs the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page, and in 2018, a glimmer of hope did emerge when it was revealed that DNA evidence had been discovered at 3 of the crime scenes. This breakthrough presented a tantalizing possibility, the chance to conclusively link these cases and bring the perpetrators to justice. Among the DNA samples were hairs found clutched in Kathleen's hand and a biological material recovered from Robin's body. The advancement of DNA technology over the years has infused the families with renewed optimism, sparking a flicker of hope that they may finally unravel the truth behind these senseless killings. William Thomas was quoted as saying, "I'm very optimistic." Despite being told countless times that his sister's case was cold, he remains steadfast in the belief that it still is solvable with unwavering determination. He says he's committed to seeking justice for Kathleen and all the victims, knowing that their families have waited too long for closure. And now this is just a personal story that I have, not to basically take away from the spotlight. Obviously everything that's happened here is completely horrible, but basically what had happened, and this is why I'm a firm believer in stay strapped or get clapped, because again, people are absolutely insane out there. I was driving from Virginia, and I was driving from West Virginia. I had just crossed over into Virginia, and there was a car wreck on the main road. And basically, traffic was backed up, so I looked at Google Maps or whatever. And I was like, oh, there's a side road over here that goes through the middle of nowhere that I can use to get around this. So I remember my ex-wife was sleeping in the seat next to me. I always keep something in the glove box. And as I was driving between these 2 farms on this very, very narrow road in a Honda Civic that was barely big enough for the Honda Civic, there was this hill that when you crested over, you couldn't see on the other side. So I had seen that there was a truck parked on the side of the road, just barely enough room for my car to get through, and there was a guy standing there talking to the other guy in the truck. So they both stopped as I was coming around the corner and looked at me, and I was like, well, that's a little creepy. So as I kept going up over the hill, I looked down and there was a car turned sideways at the bottom of the hill blocking the road. At that point, I was like, absolutely not. I opened the glove box, I grabbed the old force multiplier, man's answer to any crazy people that might be out there, put it in reverse, and then backed up. Well, I pulled a 3-point turn on this really, really small road, and it wasn't a 3-point turn at this point, it was like a 6-point turn, and I looked behind me as I was kind of like starting to take off, and there was a guy, like the guy who was outside of the truck. First off, the guy who was in the truck was no longer in the truck. I don't know what happened to him, but the guy who was outside of the truck was now power walking towards my car. And like, it kind of looked like he was trying to get my attention, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. And I just kind of took off. So the point is that these things do happen out there. Like, if you're on the road by yourself or even with somebody, the point is that you never know what people's intentions are. In fact, even if you get pulled over by the cops, you're allowed to like pop on your hazard lights and go to an area that is populated if you do not feel safe. At least that's what I've always been told. Maybe there'll be a cop listening to this is like, no, you're actually supposed to pull over immediately. But you're supposed to acknowledge to the cops that, hey, I see you, but I'm not stopping on a dark road, and I'm not laughing at anybody. This is just like, it's kind of how my voice sounds. Like, I don't stop on dark roads even if a cop is trying to pull me over. I'll go to a gas station, or even if you have something on you, because they kind of like, it takes half a second for somebody impersonating a cop to take you out. That's all I'm saying. So stay safe out there, and that's the best thing I can say. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed my ramblings just now, leaving a like would be fantastic, and subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on when I post. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and any other links that I have in the description if you want to check any of those out. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank men real quick. At the Literal Wendigo tier, we have Grayson West, Stupid Fox, and Trash Panda in a trench coat. Thank you guys. At the Eyewitness to the Event tier, we have Beaver Malaga and Wet Skeleton, which gets me every time. At the first-hand accounts, we have Cody Cherry Drake, Yeeps, and at the second-hand accounts, we have Bianca, Kanan Johnson, Fred Rush, and Troy. And to the rest of my patrons, I appreciate y'all's support as well. You're very awesome, and I love you. All right, so that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.